Predestination versus free will. Predestination is the belief that human destiny, whether salvation or damnation, is determined by God in advance. This teaching is found in some strands of Christianity and Islam. The idea is that God is all-knowing and sovereign, so nothing happens outside his plan. Supporters argue it ensures God's power is absolute. Critics, however, argue it strips humans of responsibility. If everything is pre-decided, moral accountability seems meaningless. On the other hand, free will teaches that humans have genuine choice in belief and action and are judged accordingly. This creates its own tension. If God is all-powerful, how can human freedom exist outside his control? The debate has raged for centuries. St. Augustine and Calvin leaned heavily toward predestination, while other theologians defended human choice. Today, this belief remains controversial because it touches on human dignity, morality, and the very character of God. Polygamy in religious history. Polygamy, marriage to more than one spouse, appears throughout religious history. In the Hebrew Bible, figures like Abraham, Jacob, and Solomon had multiple wives. Early Islam permitted up to 4 wives under specific conditions, emphasizing fairness and financial ability. Some Christian groups, most famously early Mormons in the 19th century, practiced it openly. Supporters argue polygamy was context-driven. In societies with high male mortality from war, it provided social stability for widows and children. Critics, however, see it as a system that reduces women to property and perpetuates inequality. Modern Judaism and Christianity officially reject it, while Islam permits it in theory, but it is rare in practice. In most of the modern world, polygamy is outlawed. The controversy lies in the clash between ancient scripture and modern values about marriage, equality, and gender roles. Hell and eternal punishment. The belief in eternal punishment is one of the most unsettling doctrines in religion. Christianity, Islam, and parts of Hinduism and Buddhism describe realms of torment for the wicked. The problem arises when this is compared to divine mercy. How can a loving, compassionate God condemn people to unending suffering? Critics argue the punishment is disproportionate and rooted in fear-based control. Some modern theologians reinterpret hell as metaphorical, a state of separation from God, not literal fire. Others propose annihilationism, the idea that the wicked simply cease to exist. Yet, traditionalists defend the doctrine as necessary for justice. If evil goes unpunished, then moral order collapses. This belief remains deeply controversial because it forces people to reconcile the tension between divine justice and divine love, and because it shapes how religions motivate their followers to obey. Women's roles in religion. Religious traditions often impose gender-specific roles that remain highly debated. In Catholicism and Orthodox Christianity, women cannot become priests. In Islam, women lead prayers only in female groups, not mixed congregations. Judaism restricts female roles in Orthodox contexts, though Reform Judaism ordains women freely. Supporters of these restrictions argue they are divinely ordained and preserve tradition. Critics call them discriminatory and outdated, pointing out that women played significant roles in Scripture. Deborah as a judge in Israel, Mary Magdalene as a witness to the resurrection, and Khadijah as Muhammad's supporter. Feminist theologians argue limiting women in leadership reduces the fullness of faith. The clash highlights the broader debate between preserving sacred texts versus adapting to modern ideas of gender equality. Prosperity Gospel. The Prosperity Gospel is a modern Christian teaching that claims faith, positive confession, and financial donations will result in material wealth and physical health. Popularized by televangelists in the United States, it has spread globally, particularly in Africa and Latin America. Supporters see it as evidence that God rewards faith with abundance. Critics condemn it as manipulative, arguing it preys on the poor and desperate. They point out how Jesus lived a life of poverty and sacrifice, not luxury. Prosperity preachers often accumulate enormous personal wealth while promising blessings to followers who give generously. This teaching is controversial because it shifts the focus of religion from spiritual growth and service to personal gain. It raises ethical concerns about exploitation and distorts the message of sacrifice and humility central to many religious traditions. Blood sacrifice and animal sacrifice. In ancient religions, blood and animal sacrifice were common. Judaism once practiced animal sacrifices at the temple in Jerusalem. Islam retains ritual sacrifice during Eid al-Adha, and Hinduism historically included animal offerings in some traditions. The logic behind sacrifice was that life, represented in blood, was sacred and offered back to God or gods as atonement or thanksgiving. Critics argue it is unnecessary cruelty and incompatible with modern ethics. Many religions have moved away from it, replacing blood sacrifices with symbolic acts like prayer, fasting, or charity. Yet the controversy persists, especially where animal sacrifice remains active, as it raises questions about morality, symbolism, and humanity's relationship with creation. Religious dietary laws. Many religions prescribe what followers can and cannot eat. Judaism has kosher laws, Islam has halal, and Hinduism and Buddhism emphasize vegetarianism. Fasting is another form of dietary discipline found in Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. Supporters argue these laws cultivate discipline, identity, and spiritual purity. Critics see them as restrictive or arbitrary, pointing out how rules often evolve from historical or hygienic reasons rather than divine command. For example, avoiding pork may have originally been tied to health risks in hot climates. The controversy comes from modern believers asking whether such laws are timeless or outdated cultural relics. For some, following them is central to faith identity. For others, they are barriers to integration in a globalized, diverse world. End times prophecies. Nearly every religion contains visions of the end of the world or a final age. Christianity speaks of the Second Coming, Islam of the Mahdi and return of Jesus, Hinduism of the Kali Yuga, and Buddhism of Maitreya, the future Buddha. Such prophecies are controversial for several reasons. First, they create fear and speculation. Many leaders have wrongly predicted dates, leading to disappointment and disillusionment. Second, end times belief often influences politics and conflict, as groups see wars or disasters as signs of prophecy being fulfilled. Supporters argue that these teachings offer hope, that evil and suffering will one day end. Critics counter that they encourage fatalism or even violence, as some sects try to bring about events to fulfill prophecy. The tension between hope, fear, and manipulation makes end times teaching one of the most divisive topics in religious belief. Faith healing versus modern medicine. Faith healing is the practice of relying on prayer, rituals, or spiritual intervention for physical health rather than medical treatment. Found in Christianity, Hinduism, and traditional religions worldwide, it often sparks controversy when believers reject proven medical care. Supporters point to stories of miraculous healings and argue that God is the ultimate healer. Critics highlight cases where children have died from treatable conditions because parents refuse medical help. Some religious groups forbid blood transfusions or vaccines, which has sparked public health crises. The controversy lies in balancing freedom of belief with the responsibility to protect life. While some see faith healing as complementing medicine, others insist it replaces it. This raises ethical questions about science, faith, and human rights, especially when minors are involved and cannot choose for themselves. Religious exclusivity. Many religions claim to be the only true path to God or salvation. Christianity teaches that salvation comes through Christ alone. Islam declares that Muhammad is the final prophet. Judaism emphasizes its covenant with God. Hinduism and Buddhism often assert unique paths to liberation. These exclusivist claims create controversy in a pluralistic world. Supporters argue that truth, by definition, cannot contradict itself. There must be one correct path. Critics see exclusivity as arrogant, divisive, and harmful to interfaith relations. This belief fuels conflict, missionary activity, and even wars. In contrast, some modern believers promote inclusivism or pluralism, suggesting all faiths may contain truth. Yet, exclusivity remains at the core of many religions, making it one of the most controversial beliefs of all time, and one that continues to shape global interactions and tensions. Religious violence and holy wars. Throughout history, religions have been linked to violence, from the Crusades and jihads to sectarian conflicts in Ireland and India. Believers often claim they fight for divine justice or defense of the faith. Supporters argue that violence is justified when protecting sacred lands or communities. Critics counter that religion should be about peace, not bloodshed. The controversy is deep. Some say holy wars are political conflicts disguised as religious struggles, while others insist they are commanded by Scripture. In modern times, terrorist groups invoke religion to justify violence, while mainstream believers condemn such acts. The lasting tension is whether religion inspires violence or whether humans exploit religion to serve political and tribal agendas. Religious attitudes towards science. Religion and science often collide over questions of origins, medicine, and knowledge. The debate over evolution versus creationism is a prime example. Some religious groups reject Darwin's theory, insisting on a literal reading of Scripture. In history, figures like Galileo were condemned for challenging church authority with scientific discoveries. Today, conflicts continue over stem cell research, climate change, and artificial intelligence. Supporters of strict religious positions argue that science cannot override divine revelation. Critics insist religion should adapt to evidence and discovery.